Say, sidekick.
We would like to welcome everyone to our city council meeting. It is Thursday, April 3rd, and we appreciate you being here. We would like to excuse Ryan Hill, who's not here with us tonight, and we have council member Marigoni and Wilcox are on Zoom. So they will be listening, and also our city planner Malcolm Jenkins is out of town. With that, then I will go ahead and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I will lead you through that, and then Councilmember Flowers will do the reverence. Everyone will please stand. Repeat after me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our Heavenly Father, we're always grateful to come before thee. We're grateful for the many blessings that thou hast provided for us throughout our lives. We're grateful to be able to come before thee in a meeting such as this, a city council meeting. We always pray that thy influences can be upon us to help us in having a good discussion and listening to those promptings that might enable us and help us to make good choices, and that we might be able to express ourselves in such a way that it will be understood. Grateful for this area that we live in, grateful for the freedoms that we have here that allow us to become the very best we can. Again, thank you for Christ's Spirit, which we hope will accompany us here tonight. And as we say in the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
So just a few upcoming events. You'll see if you have a copy of your agenda. The spring cleanup is going to be on Saturday, April 12th. Here in this building, here in the parking lot from 8 o'clock until 1 o'clock. We will have a newsletter that will be going out next week that will show you things that are permitted for you to come and dump and those things that are not. And also, it's help you pray there out so you can see. April 18th, we have 2 hunts. This year we're doing the nighttime teenager hunt. Is going to be on Friday night at 9 o'clock. If there's anyone who wants to come and help with our Easter egg hunt this year, before we even get to this, on the 8th and the 15th, we're going to be filling eggs here in the Civic Center at 6 o'clock. So if any of you can come and help fill eggs would be great. And then the day of the hunt, so the night of the hunt is here. Teenagers bring their flashlights. If you've never came and watched, it's really a fun thing to see. And so if you want to come help put out the candy and help be a gate guarder to make sure the kids stay where they are until they can run onto the field at 9, we're going to be putting out candy at 8 o'clock. And then the next morning, on the 19th, which is a Saturday at 9 o'clock a.m., they will be here. And there are the different ages. These are for ages 1 through 12. And again, the newsletter and on the sign you probably saw coming in. And also on our website, you can see where the different age groups are going to be. And if you're interested in helping put out candy that morning, again, be here at 8 o'clock. So our next city council meeting on the 17th is going to be canceled due to a Utah League of Cities and Towns state conference that they have every year down in St. George.
Can I ask a question? Why are we canceling it? Because I think most members are going to be here.
Well, because we had already arranged to cancel it because of the Utah League of Cities and Towns conference that we are having. Morgan's going to be gone. Brighton's going to be out of town. I'm going to be going, and any of you would have signed up to go, and so that's the reason why we're canceling that meeting. On April,
Are we going to hold it the next week?
yes, we have a meeting on April the 24th, then it's going to be a budget meeting. So if there was anything that we needed, like we got in our meeting to add on, we could at that time. Okay, so the first thing on our agenda tonight then is going to be public comments. So if anyone has public comments, if you would like to come up, you state your name and you have 3 minutes for a public comment.
Good evening, Travis Bates, resident of Hooper. I was glad to see the agenda come out, and I'm glad Ricky, or the Honorable Ricky, or what did you do the official title? It's Ricky. So I'm glad to see Ricky come here and talk to the city council about Weaver elections. So Weaver does a great job on their social media. There's a ton of shout outs. I'm very proud of Weaver County's election cycle, that we don't make the news. Ricky gets invited on local news networks to talk about other counties. One concern I do have are the number of polling places in Weaver County. And I'm hoping Ricky talks a little bit about that tonight, and something that I would like cities to put pressure on the county for. Weaver County has about 300 square miles of land. Almost 500 square miles. Davis County has about half of what we have. We have about 100,000 less residents. Davis County had around 15 in-person polling places in the last election. Weaver had less than 5. I think we had two. So 500 square miles, 2 in-person voting. Now, I love the ease of voting. I wish I could vote from my cell phone, but I have family members, and we all have family members that like to go punch buttons and hold the dials. And I think that is an option that cities need to put more pressure on the county for in-person voting, without having to drive 40, 50 miles to get there. So thank you, appreciate it. Ricky, looking forward to hearing what you got to say tonight. Thank you, Hannah.
Thank you. Any other?
Frank Thurgood, I'm not actually a citizen of our city. Moved out here, however, in 1955, and always been proud to say I was a Hooper. Until this recently. I had a very bad experience with Hooper City. And I'm here to complain today. I'll start with last August, about the middle of August, I was in a 3-day meeting in Salt Lake with the health department. I came home to find 4 inches of water flowing across my front yard. Water seeping into my basement, 15 inches below grade level. Because my neighbor had turned the irrigation water on and left it on for 4 days. My choices at that time was to pump up the water the best I could. I'd also call him and told him I didn't appreciate it, asking how much money he had. But then I got thinking, to be the good citizen, I need to solve that. I proposed I put in a drain on the east and the north side of my property, which abuts the Parker property. And I'm using my money for the drain, which would catch that wastewater from the irrigation and dump it into the drainage a little quicker. There's already a culvert there that I helped pay for. So I proposed that. I talked to an excavator. He gave me a price and I said, let's go ahead. First, we're gonna go get a permit, which is my first mistake, trying to get a permit. In fact, the engineer from West Point City told me I should have just not gone ahead and done it. I talked to Jared and he came over, he's a neighbor of mine. He came over and looked at the property. There's a culvert 50 feet north of my property that I helped pay for. It goes across the road to the west and then back to the south inside Davis County. I live in Davis County. So I just thought this drain would get that water. I could put my drain into that city culvert and just more speedily get that water into the drainage, which can help me and help the irrigation people. So I proposed that, I come up, Jared said it looked good. He came and saw it. But we had some excavator up to the permit. I did. And when he come to Hooper City, they said, no, you can't do that. They didn't tell him why, they didn't tell me, said, I don't even know who to talk to. So I guess he went a couple of days in a row. Trying to get the permit, never did get it, called me about it, I came up to Hooper City. I was not able to talk to anybody except the girls in the front office. I was told that Taylor Stopper, who I did not know, could talk to me. Jared couldn't talk to me. They said nobody was there to talk to. I came back probably 4 or 5 different times to Hooper City to talk to why I couldn't get a permit to just put the drain ditch water, the wastewater into the drain ditch quicker. Well, this went on. I finally got a Taylor Stopper, who wrote me, who actually seemed quite amenable to what I was doing, because Jared did, he thought it was a very workable solution. And we're only going to put the drain in about 1 to 1.5 feet below the surface, just to catch irrigation wastewater and get it into the drainage. The drain ditch goes south in Executive. Well, Taylor, if you look there's a memorandum from Taylor that mentions Hooper City does not typically allow private land drain connections directly into the storm drain system. Now, drainage is apparently became storm drains, which they've always been storm drains, but they were originally built to drain waste irrigation water. Is that not right? Hooper wouldn't exist if you didn't have that drainage as a farmer. You couldn't farm it. The original pioneers dug a canal, brought irrigation water, they leveled the land, they put drainages in. They take the wastewater away. If you don't, you can't farm. I don't understand why water that's already gonna go to the drain ditch can't go into my land drain and then go into the drain. I don't understand that there is no rhyme or reason to that reasoning. If somebody can tell me that, a good one, I just love to hear. I was told to go to West Point.
And your time is up, but I'll give you like 30 more seconds if that's all right.
I'm gonna take one more time for that, because I have been 3 months trying to talk with Hooper City. And I told myself I wasn't gonna be angry, but I'm getting that way really quickly. Because this is the same nonsense that's happened all along. I couldn't talk to anybody. Anyway, they took Taylor Stopper said to go to West Point City. You live in West Point. So I did. I talked to the engineer there. And he came out. We got a meeting between he and I and Stopper. And they couldn't understand why. We came to an agreement that if I would agree to let them disconnect that when they develop the property to the north of me, that they could give me the go ahead. Stopper was going to write that agreement up. The next thing I know, I got another memorandum from Taylor Stopper, which is on the next page here. And again says no, Hooper City can't allow that. I still don't understand it. I think you guys need to think about that. Where does waste irrigation water go? Can somebody answer that for me? I've got water coming across my front yard. What am I supposed to do with it? No answer? Dave?
yeah, you know, of course, that isn't your water, it shouldn't be your problem, right? It's the person who is.
Yeah, and I'm spending my money to solve the problem, and that makes it even more infuriating.
Is your microphone on, Dell?
You're what?
Is your microphone on? Sorry. Thank
There you
you.
go.
Okay. But it's,
Well,
the water is going to Davis County either way, into the drainage either way. Why that's not allowed, I just don't understand. I think I got a lot more here, because this has happened to me about 5 times. And I think Oklahoma City needs to look at that ordinance. That is a ridiculous ordinance. That you can't get rid of waste irrigation water. Because what do you do with it? You just wait till it dries up and then you have to move out. Nobody here has a good answer, do you?
Well, I know what our ordinance says. We've had a couple of conversations and I did address them. So maybe that's something as a counselor that we need to look at that ordinance.
I'm just saying, that's what I'm here for. Somebody needs to get some common sense into that ordinance, because there needs to be somewhere to put that water. And drainages were built, to take drain water, wastewater.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Okay, are there any other comments?
Oh, I do have another comment. But I think you really need to look at finding somebody besides Taylor Stockard. He was very rude. He was dishonest. In my dealing with him all along. The engineer and the planner from West Point City at the meeting. I shouldn't say this, but I will, said Hooper City's got problems. And I can see from my dealing with you guys that you do have problems. You need to solve that problem. Thanks.
Any other public comments that anyone has? Okay, the next thing on our agenda then is the approval of the minutes. Has everyone had a chance to look through the minutes? There was only one correction that I saw, and it's just a name correction, and it is on page number 4, where it says Dan Warwood, and his name is actually Dan Warwood. Did any of you notice any other corrections? Anybody online have any corrections? Okay, if that's the only correction, then I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll make
a motion to approve the minutes of March 6, 2025. Okay, the motion was made by Councilmember Northrup. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second is made by Councilmember Fowers. Any discussion on this motion? All in favor?
I,
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Okay, so the first thing we have then under discussion items, reports, we have Ricky Hatch here with us from Weaver County Elections that has a presentation for us. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ricky Hatch from Weaver County, County Clerk Auditor, and happy to talk. And happy to work with Morgan. Morgan does a great job working with us. And she's gonna do a great job doing the slides too. Which,
I'll try. Sorry, I've got like 4 people's jobs right now. I'm trying.
Just really quickly on the
Oh.
voting locations and having them. Weaver County, in 2012, we had 62 voting locations throughout the county. That was when 90% of, well, probably 85% of all voters voted in person. The past several years, it's been about 2% of voters who voted in person. So if you look at 2% of Hooper's voters, which I believe have a little 5,000 registered voters, and turnout for municipal elections tends to be less than 50%. You're looking at about 100 people who would take advantage of in-person voting location. I'm not saying that it's impossible or that you shouldn't request something like that, but just to put a little perspective to that. And we will always have in-person voting options available for the citizens of Weaver County. We currently have 2 vote centers that we use. One is up in the Ogden Valley, because of weather and concerns over driving through the canyons. And the other one is at the fairgrounds for the large elections, or for smaller elections, it's at the county offices in downtown London. Okay, let's talk about turnout. Go ahead. We've had, looking from 1984 to 2011, voter turnout in Utah dropped. In Weber County, dropped by 54%. And go ahead and click on the next one. That meant that in 2011, one person's vote counted for 50 other people who either couldn't vote because they were too young, under 18, or they chose not to vote. Let's go to the next slide. Now let's look at voter turnout trends over the past from 2002 to 2024. This is for primary elections. If you take a look, 2014 was a low point. 2020, which had the G stands for the open governor's race. That's when Governor Herbert stepped down. So you had Governor Cox, Red Hughes, and others that were running with quite a high turnout, 62% in the primary. Let's do the next slide. In general elections, the keys stand for presidential elections. So there's always a spike in turnout for presidential elections. But this is the average between 2002 and 2024. Now let's look at municipal elections on the next slide. Municipal elections, you can see, is quite a bit lower. Back in 2011, it was 21% in person or total votes cast as a percentage. Total turnout, going up to as high as 40%. Next slide. So I put all of these three graphs together and just ask the question, what? And the red line is counts for 2015 when you see all of the increase in each type of election. And the question is, what many voter participated in increase? Again, that's when we first implemented vote by mail. Now we had a special election in 2013 for vote by mail. We weren't ready to implement it countywide in 2014, but in 2015 was when we started implementing that.
Sorry.
This isn't a commercial for vote by mail. We should always have options for our voters. And with the recent legislative session that changed some issues around vote by mail, we'll talk about that a little bit. It's just looking at the impact of vote by mail. Okay, let's go to the next slide. I'll go through these pretty fast because I don't want to keep you here until 10 o'clock. We're going to talk about election integrity in Utah, and there are 4 pillars. These are the 4 pillars on which election integrity rests for Utah, the main functions of that. Go ahead and click on the next button. The first 3 of these are audited. We'll talk about audits to the team at later in the presentation. Next, please. The first one deals with voter records. It's important that we have clean voter records, and in Utah, the Lieutenant Governor's office owns the programming for the voter registration database. The clerks own the data. So the Lieutenant Governor's office doesn't touch the data. We don't touch the program. That's a separation of powers to help ensure consistency. Lieutenant Governor's office also audits the county clerk's management of the data of the voter registrations. Next slide. As far as verification, before a voter can even be registered to vote, they must provide either a Utah driver's license or a state ID card or a valid social security number. Before we register them, we verify either their driver's license number, state ID, or social security with the appropriate agencies. And if we can't verify it, we don't register that voter. They don't receive the ballot. And we reach out to voters to get additional information. Next slide. We maintain our voter list. We're very careful to maintain those. These are the 5 different ways that we keep a really close tab to make sure that our voter rolls are clean. As an example, in 2013, when we had our first vote by mail election, we mailed out approximately 100,000 ballots. 20,000 of those came back to us as undeliverable. Our voter rolls were not very clean in 2013. And 2024, this last year, 1.9% came back as undeliverable. Next slide. And this is audited again by the Lieutenant Governor's office, and it's done throughout the year. And we don't know what records they're auditing or when they're auditing. And they provide us with new reports. Next slide. Now we're going to talk a little bit about ballot envelope security. Next slide. First off, when we're processing to make sure that a ballot will be received back from a voter should be counted, that envelope remains sealed during the entire process. And there's no personal information or party information on the outside of that. We do that on purpose. We don't want that to influence our decision in any way in determining whether to count somebody's vote or not. Next slide. Next, we're missing a couple of images. That's okay. On each ballot envelope, there's a barcode, and that is a unique control number that is generated by the system. And it's specific to both the voter and the election, but also to the specific ballot. In other words, if you go to the next slide, there used to be a picture of a dog eating a ballot. There's not, and sometimes you lose your ballot or it gets damaged or something like that, and you need to request a new ballot. That's not a problem. We're fine with that. On the next slide, we'll talk about some of the controls related to that. And there was an image on there. That's really funny. The barcode, that barcode and that control number, they have to be inactivated before we can even send out a new ballot. So if you called and said, hey, the dog ate my ballot, and then we send you a new one, and then you call back and said, I lost my ballot, then we send you a new one. You could do that 100 times, and you could return every one of those ballots in a different Dropbox, and you can try to come vote in person as well. Only one of those votes is going to get through. And that's the control we have in relation to that. We'll talk about the equipment that is not pictured here. The sorter takes the envelopes, takes the control number and verifies that the voter has already tried to vote, that it's legitimate, valid control number for that election, and then it takes a picture of the voter's signature. Next slide. For signature verification, we compare up to 5 signatures on file, and if we challenge that, it goes through 2 additional layers of review before we notify the voter and tell them that their signature has been challenged, and the voter then has 2 weeks to correct that. Next. And this is we audit the signature verification process while it's being done to make sure that the equipment is functioning properly and that the individuals are being properly trained. Next slide. Let's talk just briefly about chain of custody. We have an intense chain of custody processes and requirement when we process our ballots. And if we have certain reconciliation points throughout the process, and if we're 1 ballot off, everything stops and we research. That's interesting because we process over 100,000 ballots in a large election. But we really do care about every single ballot and make sure that no additional ballots, unauthorized ballots are introduced, and no valid ballots are used. Next. This is an off picture of our scanner. Ballot itself. Next slide. Let's go to the next slide.
They're pretty cool looking.
As far as security measures, these machines are certified after extensive testing. They're never connected to the internet. There's no modem, Wi-Fi, or Bluetooth. All the software updates are logged and done manually. We have security seals on the equipment, 5 security seals per machine, and we conduct hash audits. Any activity on that machine is logged and tracked. And this is audited. Next slide. These are all audited as well. Audited before the election as well as after all the ballots have been counted before the election is certified. And these machines were just recently the subject of a legislative audit that was done. They brought out technical silent hackers to see if they could hack into these machines. That report will come out on April 15th at the legislature. I'm happy to tell you in a sneak preview of that, they agreed with the fact that these machines could not be hacked. And they tried, I watched them try, and they were very good, but they could not get in. Next slide. The last pillar is voter responsibility. We are all responsible to protect our own ballots. You can do that by making sure your address is current with the driver's license division and at vote.utah.gov. You can track the status of your ballot. It's at no cost. You go to ballottracks.utah.gov to enter in your information. And we will send you a text, an email, or a phone call, or all three, when we mail you your ballot, when we've received your ballot back at our office, and when your ballot has been counted. There's also a free service by the post office that actually sends you an email each morning that tells you and shows you images of all the mail pieces you're receiving that day. That's a great way to know when your ballots are going to be arriving. And you just go to the postal service website and you can sign up for that. And if you get a ballot for somebody else that doesn't live at your house or no longer lives there, give our office a call and we can take care of them. Next slide. Audits, we have tons of audits. I think every election, just in Weber County alone, we go through 9 or 10 different types of audits. Throughout the election process, the ballot processing. These are always done in full view of the public, both before, during, and after. Next slide. Now, let's talk about the exciting stuff. New laws. There was a few election-related bills, actually 63 of them this year. These are the major changes that I wanted to talk about. First off, Utah used to be a postmark plus state. This has been changed now that we are what's called a ballot enhanced state, meaning that your vote will only count if it's in the county clerk's office or in a certified drop box by 8 p.m. on election night. It used to be that if you mailed it before election day, before the deadline, and it came in, it took a week to get in, we could still count it. That is no longer the case. We have to count it as of election night. Okay, let's see if this next.
Is that the same for overseas?
No, military and overseas have federal protections that give them up to 13 days after election day. So, okay, it did come through, very good. Here's the other complication from these new laws. First off, in the left column, talks about voters' choice. So right now, we mail ballots out to all active registered voters. Before 2029, that will not change at all. We will continue to mail them out to all active registered voters. However, voters will begin making a choice on how they want to receive their ballot. You'll do it when you go to the driver's license division to get or renew your driver's license. You'll get it if you go to vote in person. The poll worker will ask you, do you want to receive your ballot by mail or not receive it and then come vote in person? And then you can also make that request. And you'll have to make that choice if you update or register online with your voter registration. So before 2029, nothing will happen except you'll be given questions to see how you want to cast your ballot. After January 1 of 2029, if the voter hasn't made that actual choice, we will no longer mail them a ballot. They will have to come and vote in person. At which point we'll ask them again, do you want your ballot by mail or do you want to continue to vote in person? The voter makes that choice and that's what they will do. Voters will have to remake this decision at a minimum once every 8 years. That's how frequently you have to update your driver's license. And so you will, as part of that, you will have to make that choice at least once every 8 years. If you do not vote in 2 even year general elections, 2 November even year elections, we will also stop mailing you a ballot. But you can always, the voters they can always opt back in to receiving their ballot by mail. The next column on the right deals with your ID number and signature. Starting this year, on the back of the envelope, you'll have a place for your signature, and you will also have a place to write down your last 4 digits of your driver's license number or your state ID. If you don't have one of those, you can put your social security number. If you don't do them before 2029, you don't have to put them on there at all if you don't want to. If you don't put them on there, we will check your signature and validate it that way. If you do put them on there, we will validate it through those last 4 digits. After 2029, you must include the last 4. That will become the primary method of identifying that the voter is who they say they are. That ballot belongs to that voter. So you'll have to include those. If you don't provide a number, you have to provide a photocopy of your voter ID, of acceptable ID. So that would be a photograph of your state ID or other acceptable ID that's spelled out in the statute. And we will no longer validate signatures after 2029. They'll still be there because that you're signing an affidavit, but we will no longer validate the last pool, the primary and the only method of validation. for those. Any questions about that part? And we're almost done.
I have a question about signatures. Sorry. As people grow older, I've noticed my mother's signature has declined quite bad. I mean, she really signs her signature bad. So, what do you do in cases like that where people's signature gets so bad from one year to the next?
Excellent question. We keep up to 5 signatures per voter on file. And as people age and we can tell that they have aged, we know the age of the voter. We then will capture that older signature. There are still commonalities. All of our signature reviewers are required to take forensic signature training. So they have ways that they can identify that even if it's wavy or wiggly, that it still has similar characteristics. However, as folks get older or if they have a disability, they can actually mark a box on their voter registration form where they can call us and say, hey, I broke my arm, or I have some kind of condition where I don't sign very well. And state law allows us to accept that information, and then we can make accommodations for the alternative ways for that voter to verify that they return that ballot. So they do have options to help make sure that their vote stays secure, but that it's not too burdensome for them to get their ballot count.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Next slide.
Hey, Ricky, can I ask you one quick question?
I was just gonna tell you, do you wanna come up, Travis, or the people listening won't be able to hear?
Welcome, Shannon. I don't have a cold, so you're okay. You're okay.
Okay.
Kind of like one of my
That's right.
So when we're tying in now the use of social security, I know some voter information is public or can be accessed. Is that accessible with my name as well? If I put my social security number on there with my name, I don't care who has my name, but is it tied in with that and can that be accessed by anybody?
That's a really good question. The first off, the law also requires that ballots cover the location where you provide that information. Weaver County already covered that. There are a couple of counties that don't cover that. They're now so they have to cover that. But that is not publicly available information. That's only available to us internally. That's why, as we worked with the legislature, we said, let's do driver's license or state ID, because the last 4 of that not as risky to have that be visible to others. And that's why those are listed first as the primary option. Now, about 97% of all citizens or of all voters in Utah have a driver's license or state ID. So we're hoping that it's just the 3% of folks who don't have that will provide social security. Good question. Lastly, if you have questions about elections, go to reliable sources, weaverelections.gov, vote.utah.gov. Generally, if there's a .gov, you can trust it a lot more. There are great sites that aren't .gov, but it's good to be wise in your consumption of information. Just make sure you're vetting any allegations or questions or anything like that. And you're always welcome to contact us. This on the next slide is our contact information. You can email us, go to our website, you can call us. We're always available, and we're happy to be the administrators for Hooper City's elections this year. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other questions from anyone? And even though we're small in numbers tonight, we have a lot of residents that do go on and listen to our meetings. So no, the information will be more widespread than just what it appears tonight.
Fantastic. Yeah, happy to answer questions anytime.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next thing on our agenda, and is he online? Can you see? Okay. We have Seth Olison, who is the manager of the Local Governments Division of the Utah State Auditor's Office. I had asked him if he would come and explain some things as far as the state procurement code. So we will go ahead and turn the time to you, and we really appreciate you joining with us tonight.
Thank you. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Awesome. So Periodically, as the manager for the local government division, we have questions from different municipalities, special service districts, counties, and they'll ask questions with respect to purchasing or procurement or things, financial things in general. With respect to Hooper City, our office received some complaints. We run the fraud, waste, and abuse hotline. And if our special projects team receives something from that, they will go in and do things. A while back, a year or so ago, Tyson in our office had a complaint with Hooper City, and they looked at some professional services, and the recommendation at that time was, hey, there's not a contract on file for these professional services, and our office's recommendation was to do a request for proposal or request for qualifications for those professional services, and then establish a contract and have those professional services hired by a contract. My understanding is that one of those was for your sewer system, which was going to be exempted because of a sole source issue because of the engineering firm that was provided with. And there were some questions with just looking through your past minutes in Hooper City with legal services. It is, municipalities are subject to the Utah Procurement Code, and each municipality should have a purchasing policy or procurement policy in place that provides those thresholds for the dollar amounts where a bid becomes necessary. And that would be the question there is, any of those services that are being provided, if the total sum of those professional services cross that threshold where a bid would be required, it should be bid out. For instance, when you're dealing with accounting services, for instance, for your external auditors, the recommendation is to have that bid out every 4 years. It doesn't mean that you have to change the service provider in that time. You can bid it out, and the same professional service people can put in their hat in the ring again, and the city council can award that to that same person again. And if it's for professional services, you can take into consideration their experience with the entity and other considerations. But the recommendation there is that you should bid those services out periodically. On our website, we recommend every 4 years so that each new council person that comes in gets a chance to vote on those contracts sometime during their term. I hope that answers some of the questions, but I'd also like to answer any questions that the council or the mayor may have. So,
Is this for your thing a recommendation or a requirement?
so as far as having a contract in place, it's a requirement.
Right.
You should have a contract for those. As
Okay.
far as for bidding them out, the city is required to follow that threshold that they have placed for those professional services. So I looked before the meeting to try to find Hooper City's purchasing policy to be able to look up what that threshold is. Municipalities have that little bit of leeway in there. You get to set, hey, over a certain amount, we need to have a PO, and over another amount, we have to request a certain number of bids, and whether they're sealed bids or not, you get to set out what those rules are. But once you have set what those rules are, you're required to follow them.
Right.
So it's a requirement to follow the rules, but you do have a little bit of leeway because you get to set those rules. It's a
Okay.
very bad practice to suspend those rules for a specific procurement. 99% of the time, you should be able to follow those rules unless you're in an emergency situation where you have to make a decision quickly.
Okay. So with these different things that we work with, it's a recommendation that we do it every 4 years, but we could go longer.
You could go longer. Sometimes there will be a contract that will be issued, and as part of the terms of that initial contract, it will say, we have the ability to extend this out for, a period or two. And you can specify in that contract what that period is. At the end of that period of time, you would go through and do that. You would go through the procurement process again.
Okay. All right. Thank you for clarifying.
That in our ordinance, it actually is $5,000. Anything over $5,000 requires city council approval. Whether that is the same as the procurement code, I'm not sure as far as our ordinances. But that's the only amount I could find. You know, if it's under $500, it could just be something made by staff. 500 to 5,000 is something that could be made by the mayor. Anything over 5,000 generally is sent out to bid. Any other questions from council? No? Okay, I guess, you know, the reason why I appreciate you coming, because the question had come up about our legal services, because currently we have been using the same legal services under a resolution that was dated the 3rd day of May, 2001. And I think what first brought this to our attention was, as you mentioned, there was that complaint or whatever the question turned in, we did not have a current contract. So I thought based on that we needed to do an RFP where we could put it out for bid for legal services, because it had been almost 24 years since we had done that. And that was some clarification I wanted with city council, because that was made known that they did not want to do an RFP. They just wanted to have our current legal counsel sign a contract without doing an RFP.
And based on the dollar amounts at play, I quickly just pulled up for those legal services in Transparent Utah, the transaction history for Hooper City. In 2024, depending on the name of that, but my understanding is that Mr. Richards is the attorney that is used currently by the city. And I see approximately $67,000 in 2024 that was paid out to one entity and then one listed as an individual. If those are the dollar amounts for the contracts that are in play, or the amounts that are being paid, it really should be competitively bid out. It's not a sole source thing. Retaining legal service is not something that could be justified under the sole source procurement. It should be bid out. And as I said before, it may end up being that the city continues to retain those services, but it provides the opportunity for other people to put their hat in the ring. You must say, hey, please consider us for this service. It allows you to be able to consider what other law firms are putting out as their rates. Maybe you go through the procurement process and you find out, you know what, we're getting a killer deal and they're giving us a great rate. Or you may find out that their rates are not competitive. But that's why the best use of public funds is the goal for the city council. The administrative rule for the state when it comes to procurement has a standard in there that says it's the reasonable person standard, which means it's an objective test to determine if a reasonably prudent person who exercises an average degree of care, skill, or judgment would be justified in drawing the same conclusions under the same circumstances or having the knowledge of the same facts. It would be very difficult to pass that reasonable person standard without going through that bidding process in a reasonable period of time. And in this case, at least for these services, 20 plus years is, it should be bid out more often than that to make sure that the pricing is correct and that the city is receiving the best use of their public funds as they're retaining those services. So
that's understandable. The number that you gave us, it's very interesting because the budget that we just received said that we paid a little over 40,000, and that was double what we've paid in the past years, which has been around 19,000 to 20,000. So the 60 whatever $1,000 just kind of blew my mind, because that's nothing that we've even that's nothing mentioned to us at all. So,
Well, and my search, looking at the thing, I know the last name of the person that's provided, and that's what I searched on.
uh-huh.
And I'd be happy to go through with how I came up with those numbers. I've got them in an Excel spreadsheet that I could pull up with you, and it's all available on transparent.utah.gov if any citizen wanted to look up. We have a pretty robust way of looking up vendors and seeing how much any entity in the state is paying to an individual vendor. So,
Right. We've just felt we had a pretty good deal because they have never changed their rate. So we thought that was quite fair, per hour. So thank you for the information.
yeah, you're welcome.
That certainly is something, Debbie, you can look through the accounts payable. I know as we sign each month, I know it is comparable to this. I can tell you as we sign those checks every month, it is, I would say around there, 67,000 or even maybe a little more from the checks that we're signing monthly. But you would be welcome, Debbie, to come in at any time and look at the accounts payable with the invoices that we are.
Yeah, it's just weird that there's that much of a difference from all of our past years. Staying around $20,000 and then jumping to that amount. It's almost unfathomable.
Any other questions from City Council?
Once again, Seth, you say that's a recommendation, right? It's recommended.
To put something out to bid.
Yeah, like I'm on Zoom, so I missed part of it, but
So
But
based
basically
off of
this
based off of the city's purchasing policy, that should be bid out if it's over $5,000, and we're, in 2025, which the year's not completed yet, you've already spent $12,000 so far in 2025 from the data that's available. And it was closer to $67,000 for 2024. The dollars at play are clearly over the threshold that should be bid out. And that reasonable person standard would state that it should be bid out more often. So the timing of how often the city should make the practice of bidding those contracts out in the future is a recommendation. We would recommend once every 4 years when you're looking at those professional service contracts. You could have an extension of the contract on there. Where we're currently at as far as does the city needs to do a request for proposals or a request for qualifications and enter into a contract with somebody for legal services, that would not be a recommendation. You're required to do that by state code. And it's been long enough since it was put in place that you need to do it now. That's as the mayor has talked to the council about this, she's kind of being the mouthpiece from the state auditor's office because that's who we worked with. But the city really does need to go through the process, follow state procurement code, do the procurement process, and enter into a contract. That's not a recommendation. That's a requirement that the city council needs to do. Then going forward, you can set how often that is going to be relooked at, and those contracts are going to be revisited. We would recommend at that point that you do it once every 4 years. But as far as the current situation, what needs to be handled, it needs to be taken care of by the city.
So I have a question. Our policy in our purchasing ordinance for legal services is that we bid for services over 25,000 and not the 5,000 that was mentioned. And since we have not spent over that amount, we have not been concerned at all. This anomaly of the $67,000 is something that has come from out of nowhere this year, and I'm going to ask for an itemization of that because I want to know what this was spent on. So
2023, it was $37,000. So for both of those years,
Okay.
last 2 completed years, the city has crossed that $25,000 threshold. And
Okay.
like I said, I don't have your policy in front of me, But if the threshold is $25,000, both in 2023 and
And
2024,
that's understandable.
we've
And
passed that.
we can do that. I'll just have to get an itemization of this $67,000 since it's an anomaly for our city to be using that much. So anyways, I appreciate the information that you're giving us and helping us be aware of what's going on out there and bringing this to our attention. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from city council?
Since, excuse me, I guess we've kind of reinstated the Richards for the legal services at this time. That was a whole big situation. Are we able to just retain them still right now, or do we immediately start the bid out?
Well, here's my take on that. We've already motioned as a city council, and it was unanimous to retain Brandon and Reed and to retract the RFP because we did have a contract and that was valid. So I don't know, Seth, if you're interpreting law or not, but I would like to really see what really, if this is exactly what we have to do. I don't know, but
No,
we
as-
can't.
As far as
Since
the,
that was a unanimous vote, hang on a second, and since that was a unanimous vote, we can't tonight with, a member of our city council not here, we can't retract one of our votes that it was unanimous. So I don't know what you're asking us to do. That can't be accomplished tonight.
well, and I'm not telling you have to take action on something tonight. Typically on this one, I would tell you, because I'm not an attorney, I would tell you that you should seek legal counsel. But since this is over your legal counsel and they would be a party of the contract, I can't really tell you, hey, seek legal counsel from the people that you've been receiving it from, because this is their contract. So in the grand scheme of things, I would say, yes, you need to go through the procurement process and you may end up in the exact same place, but following the process as it's spelled out in your procurement code, putting it out for an RFP, a minimum of a week, or you can leave it out for longer than that. You would be in limbo for a couple of weeks. You could come back at your next city council meeting, readdress it, and then it will have been done with the proper timing, proper channels. And it's one of the things that we sacrifice in government is transparency, and we sacrifice expediency or the speed of getting those transactions for the sake of showing that we have gone through the right process to make sure that it's done. And I think that's one of the things that Hooper City should look at is, are we going through the right process here? Yeah, it might take us a week or two longer to get us back into the seat of things. Hopefully those people that are performing those services will continue to help out the city in the meantime and say, look, this is the process that we have to take. We're going to put out this RFP. We want to go through the process and make sure that it's done right. At the end of the day, you may end up in the same place, but that way all the citizens will be able to look at it and say, yes, the city council has followed the process. And that is our job as an oversight agency, is to make sure that you go through that process. And we'll continue to watch and monitor that as you go through this process and get things taken care of.
Just answer that, what Councilman Northrup
So
was that our attorneys we have now can continue to act until we get the RFP finished and awarded. Isn't that, if I understand that correctly, our current attorneys can continue, and then we get our RFP out, and like you said, a minimum of 1 week, probably 2, but they can, if they're willing to continue until we get this RFP completed.
So I'm a little curious why we haven't done that for engineering as well as our CPA firm.
You should have done it for your CPA firm as well. My understanding is
Well, we
that
haven't.
the engineering services, that if the city has documented that there's a compelling reason why it should be. I know that we've had conversations with the engineering services for the vacuum sewer system that the city has, that they looked at that and said, this is a very niche thing that there's only one firm. And when we were consulted about that, the office's stance is, if there is a compelling reason why you're going to limit that and not put something out, the city really needs to document why they meet that exception for a sole source issue, and why it's not going to be bid out. In the case of legal services or accounting services, there's really no reason why you would have a sole source issue. Accounting services should be bid out too. If you take a look at that and you see that your CPA firm is running off a very old and expired, contract from years ago, that should be looked at again, and that should be bid out as well. For cities, it's not a specific requirement. For school districts, those must be bid out so often. If there's less than 3 bids, they're required to send it to the state auditor's office, and we will put it out to the entire CPA community so that there's a more robust bidding process for that. So, and if cities have that problem, you can send it to us too, and we would send it out to all those CPA firms so that you have a good competitive bid process.
CPA, we can go ahead and look at their contract, but this is a different one. This isn't the same one we've always had. The CPA firm we have now is different than the one, and I don't know if it's been less than 4 years, but we can certainly look into that. I know we used to have a different CPA firm than we currently have.
Well, if we decide to go ahead, we might as well do both of them at the same time.
So we would need to look and make sure what our contract is with our CPA. I'm not sure on that. We will have to look that up. I know it's been within, I would suppose, maybe 3 years. I'm not certain on that, Debbie, but we can look at what our contract is with the CPA. Any other questions that anyone has? No? Councilmember Powers, did you have any questions for him?
No, I don't believe so. There's it's a little concerning to me that we did target our legal counsel. That's what it kind of looks like. And, what would it really take to have an audit of our city to make sure if we want to be compliant with everything, whether it be our contractors or those who provide any type of service that we have a contract with? What would it take to have a state audit of our city, the whole city, to make sure that we are doing everything like we should, instead of just pulling out our legal counsel?
So, there is not one audit designed in scope to go through every single thing that you could possibly mess up on. When we get involved, it's usually because of a citizen complaint, and we will go in and we'll look at that. When we give the recommendation that you should have contracts in place for those services and review those contracts periodically to renew those and make sure that they're bid out properly, that recommendation is not for one service provider. It's for all of them. Legal, engineering, any of those services you have. And that, as far as doing an audit of that, I think that's something you guys could do in-house. You can direct your staff to say, hey, pull all of our contracts. Let's get a timing on those. When do they expire and when are we going to get those renewed? And that's something that can be done by your staff. If you have a specific concern every year when you have your external audit with your external auditors, they should be doing a entrance conference with the city council and the mayor. And if you have specific concerns, be it over contracts or any other issue where there'd be state compliance involved, you can ask them and say, hey, we're concerned about this issue or another issue, and ask them to take a deeper dive into those issues that you as the governing body have concerns about, and you can steer part of that audit. They're going to do the standard financial audit and the standard state compliance stuff, but if there's an issue that you want to, you can definitely and should steer that and say, hey, I have concerns in this specific area. Can you take a deeper dive? And they can do that for you. And that's an annual audit you'll have in this fall, and you should talk to them and say, hey, if I have concerns over them, let them know and they can take a look.
I don't mind transparency myself or having audits or whatever. It's just suspicious to me, the citizen complaint about this specific thing. And that's all I'm going to say about that, but thank you.
You're welcome.
I think too, as you remember, we talked about it in a city council meeting, and this was an email, Dale, that you would receive Councilmember Fowers on December 20th, 2023. That just says, Mayor Fowers, the Office of the Utah State Auditor operates an audit hotline. And at that time, I mean, I could read you the whole thing, but it said, we received a complaint that Hooper is paying JUB engineers, Reed Richards, and Post Asphalt Paving, but does not have contracts with these entities. So I think this is where this all originated. And then, as I mentioned before, the first I became involved was when we received, let's see, the first one I think that had my name on it was maybe in March. Because there was another one January 31st, because this had gone to Morgan. And then, like I mentioned in that one meeting, we've been trying to go through all of our records, trying to find out if we did have contracts. And so that was when I realized that we did not, that we needed to get these in place. So I don't know if it's necessarily someone's, I don't know. That was, like I say.
Well, that was on the 20th of December
2023.
of 2023. So I left office after the end of the year.
Mhm.
And then you were again notified in March of those, that same type of.
In January 31st of 2024, this was again correspondence with Morgan that she was trying to find this. And then again, March 20th, and we could not find, but at that time, they sent one out to all of us, and it shows here it went to all of the commission members and myself, again, from the auditor hotline regarding procurement, asking about this information that we were trying to find. And then again, in June 5th of 2024, again, this went to all of us, just saying again that they have not received. And like I mentioned, we've been working, trying to find, it was correspondence going back and forth with these entities trying to find the required contract.
Okay, so we've been over that before, what you just read. And
Yeah,
my concern was is that we went all last year and didn't do anything until the fall, you know, here. And then now all of a sudden, our legal counsel is the one that shows up again. So I'm just saying, that's my concern. And if we have, maybe to make sure we're right on track, maybe we ought to have the state come in and audit our city to make sure that everything is in place. And as was mentioned, when we did our financial audit, I had some concerns about that. And I actually listed them, the concerns I had, but yet there was nothing that was ever, nothing ever come of that. And so to me, that is just a concern I have. And just to make sure we're crossing all the T's, dotting all the I's, maybe we need to do a more thorough audit other than just our legal counsel.
Yeah, and I think as he mentioned, they do that every year with we have
Well,
independent audit.
right, but that's the independent audit that I'm referring to, that I actually listed down the concerns I had. But anyway, that's what I have to say about that. So.
Yeah, I think it's just a good place to start. And then you're right. If we can start going through our contracts, just making sure we always have everything done the way that it is supposed to be done. Any other questions that anyone has? Hey, well, thank you. We appreciate your time. We appreciate what your office does and giving us guidelines, and we will go forward from here and try to get all of our procurement process in order, that it needs to be legal.
Thank you for the chance to be here.
Hey, thank you. Thank you. Okay, so the next thing then on our agenda then was to do a discussion and a motion for the proposal to draft an RFP for legal services. And I know before we had one that we had received from Madison, that was one from the state. I know that you had some questions and concerns concerning this RFP. I went through and highlighted everywhere that it said mayor with consent of the city council. In time when it said city council, I know there were some questions that you had. So I think then one thing we could do would be to at least entertain a motion if we are going to do an RFP, which I think he made it pretty clear legally that we need to do that. Then we could send out, we could have Morgan send out this copy. All of you have already had a copy of this. But if you would like to see it again and maybe make suggestions, and then if we, but I would think tonight, then it would just be a motion if we are going, the proposal to draft an RFP, then everyone would need to look through this and come up with an agreement as far as what everyone would like to see as far as in the RFP.
I would like to see the itemization of the bill before we go forward. I understandable, we may have to do this RFP, but I would motion that we table it. And I would like to see the billing.
And I think that's fine. You can come in and look at the billing, but I can tell you we are paying more than 25,000 a year.
Oh, that's fine,
By-
but I want to see the itemized billing of what we're being charged so much for.
Yeah, that makes sense, because as we receive their bids and bids from others, we probably want to, compare that, so.
Yeah, take into consideration their experience and time with the city. But I'd like to motion to table, just a minute, I've got to grab my thing. I'd like to motion that we table, a proposal to draft an RFP for legal services until our next meeting, which would be our regular meeting. I don't even know now.
That will be on May the 1st.
Till our May 1st meeting, 2025.
And we could have Tammy bring to our next budget meeting, which is going to be on the 24th. She could bring, or at any given time, we could have Morgan put those together, but she could bring that for us on that budget, and we could do that. And then if it is above the 25,000, then I think at our meeting, then we need to have on the agenda that we make the motion to draft an RFP for legal services.
I'm making the motion that we move to discuss further the RFP for the legal services. I think we need to have more discussion. I think we have to have some more transparency about what charges were incurred. I think there's a lot of questions about that before we move forward with anything.
So was your original motion, Debbie, to table this until May 1st?
Yes,
2025?
yes.
Okay. So there has been a motion made by Councilmember Maragoni to table a motion on drafting an RFP until the May 1st, 2025 meeting. Is there a second? If there's not a second, is there another motion?
I'd like to do on condition that we have the itemization for the attorneys to look at and have further discussion.
I mean, that I'm on board with that, Deborah, that I would really like legal counsel, and it doesn't have to be Rita
Yes.
Brandon, really interpretate, is it really a recommendation or is it a law? I mean,
Exactly.
obviously Seth, he knows his roles and stuff, but is it really a law? Because I just think it's really unfair, just, I don't know what the word is, that we're just doing this for our legal counsel. It's
Right.
just really suspicious to me. So I would like further discussion and clarification on state code and someone that knows that law, that is an attorney, to give us recommendation before we move forward with this.
I agree, Bryce.
Office is telling us what we have to do in legally like this, then we don't have a choice. I understand the discrepancy in numbers. Make us wonder what the difference is and why. However, I think if we do the RFP and we get the bid from them and we ask for the itemized things from them, as well as whoever else bids out, I think that might answer a lot of our questions, and as well as you can come in and check the numbers, I guess, here in office. I'm not
Maybe,
sure.
maybe can we just table this for discussion till our next meeting, May 1st?
Did you make a motion, Debbie, to take
Yeah,
for
can
discussion?
I'd
Just for
like
discussion.
to make a motion that we just take this and table it to discuss it further at our next meeting on May 1st, 2025.
I'd second that.
Okay, have a second made by, motion made by Councilmember Maragoni, the second made by Councilmember Wilcox. Any discussion on this motion?
I just want to clarify. Yeah, I just want to clarify, again, it's tabled until May 1st for further discussion. Okay.
But at the time, if we will have already had a budget meeting by then, we will already know the amount over 25,000. So is there any reason why at that time, if we find that we are over our 25,000, that we couldn't have a discussion and a motion? All we're saying is we're going to draft an RFP. Would there be any reason why at that time then, if we find out we're over 25, and so it is required, as he said, it wasn't a recommendation, it was a requirement.
No, he said he was recommending the 4-year thing.
And 4-year fee, the 4 years, that requirement that we do an RFP, because we have not had any contract since the one that was dated May 3rd of 2001. So in almost 24 years, we haven't put this out to bid. We haven't done an RFP. We have had nothing other than this resolution that was passed. That's the part he said that we are required to do. Recommended, and at that time you do your RFP. If you want to say, we will look at this every 4 years, every 6 years. He mentioned he recommends every 4 years, just like he did with this, even with the CPA, and he made the statement, because you have city council members that change, you have a mayor that could change. So that is the recommended part, but it is required to do the RFP.
Okay, well, this will be a good time to have another discussion about it. So making the motion to further discuss this at our next meeting will be good. And at that time, I just want to make sure that we have access to the fully itemized billing for the 67,000 for all of us to see. I think that's transparent, and I think that's a good way to go.
Any discussion on the motion?
Well, after that discussion, I just want to make sure of the motion one more time. And that is that we're tabling it until May 1st for further discussion.
I am recommending though that we have it be a discussion and a motion, because by then we will know if we're over the $25,000. And if we are over the 25,000, then we are required to do an RFP. So if we, at our 25th meeting, we find we're over the $25,000, then what would be the reason to only have a discussion on May 1st? Because then we're putting it off then to May 15th before we ever motion that. So
We can discuss things further. I think it's better to discuss things, make sure we're doing it the right way, and then we can make the motion at the next meeting. That's what I've motioned, and I believe it was seconded.
any discussion then, just because it says motion on the agenda, you don't have to do a motion. We sometimes have that on there and we haven't made motions.
We what? I'm sorry.
I said, even if it says discussion and a motion, if at the end of the discussion, it is decided to not motion, we do not have to have a motion. But if you don't have a motion on there, then you cannot do a motion.
Well,
That's how it works.
I guess what I'm saying is it's changing my motion. I made one, and that was what I meant when I said it, and I expected it to stand as I said. So that's all I was thinking, is I just wasn't expecting it to be changed.
So currently, the action item reads, discussion motion, proposal to draft RFP for legal services. So you're saying you want to table this action item, correct? So action item A is discussion motion, proposal to draft RFP for legal services. So you're saying you want to table action item A. Is
Yeah.
that correct?
Yes,
Okay, so you are tabling action item A, which is discussion motion, proposal to draft RFP for legal services. Bryce, is that what you are seconding?
that's what I'm saying then.
Yes,
No,
yes, for discussion, because I still have some other questions, some legal questions that I would like answered. And so, yeah, I think you were changing Deborah's motion a little bit. So, but I motioned what Debbie, or second what Debbie motioned. I want further discussion. I have some questions that I want answered.
Okay, so again, the action item is
I think-
discussion
yeah.
motion.
I think it's what we're trying to figure out is when we meet again and we discuss, can we go ahead and take the action at that time to get the RFP going and not just leave it out for another couple of weeks until the next meeting to do it. So
Right.
just so we can get it rolling.
I think, you know, if they know we're working towards resolving this, which we are, to become in compliance or whatever, then what's the rush? What's another meeting? Because we want to do the right thing. But I don't think there needs to be a huge rush. You know, if we do it in May, the second council meeting in May, great. We discuss it the first meeting. And then if we in fact need to, then we can go ahead and do it in the second meeting in May.
I just want to discuss it further.
No. Any other discussion on the motion? All in favor to table action item A, say aye.
Aye.
Well, I was just going to clarify that again, table it for further discussion.
Yes, because it was a discussion and a motion, and if we discuss it and there's no reason, if everyone's concerned that we put a motion, then we can wait and do it and even have him come back again and say, yes, Silver City, you are required to do this if we need to. So, okay. All in favor? Any
Aye.
opposed?
It delays a little bit on Zoom.
Right, you weren't opposing, were you?
No, I was in favor.
Me
Aye.
too. Aye.
Okay, Okay, so the next thing we have on our action items.
Can we skip it down to B real quick?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna make a motion that we skip down to action item D for the purpose of time. And the people are here in this meeting today.
Okay, the motion was made by Councilmember Northrup to move action item D on the approval of the commercial license up to next. Is there a second to change that?
I'll second that.
Okay, that was seconded by Councilmember Fowers. All in favor?
Aye.
I,
Okay, you're going to go ahead and do that. So now we are going to have a discussion motion proposal, motion approval of commercial business license for Elena Winter, homegrown farmland preschool. Is there a presentation on that? We'll have from our city recorder.
Okay, just a little one. So they had a conditional use permit for a daycare preschool for their home. And it was passed on March 13th. The conditions that were placed on that is that we needed to receive an exemption letter from the Child Care Bureau. And then also follow state and local code requirements, and we've received everything. We've also received background checks from her and as well as her employee, I think. As far as coming to you guys, she's filing for a commercial business license. You guys approve or deny commercial business licenses, so that's where we're at now, so.
Would you like to come up, have anything to say and just go ahead and state your name? Thank you for being here and being so patient.
Thank you guys for making us for it's been time, so. I'm Elena Winter and I'm
Do you just have anything you would like to present to the city council before we make the motion to approve or deny?
yes, I think it was Morgan, yes, I think I emailed you, originally I was gonna have a license exemption, but I actually had a different license.
Oh, perfect.
And that's the one that I. emailed
Okay.
you, So, falling under, the in-home, registered in-home care center. And you guys should have everything. And
Yep, I've
my
got
employees-
those. Okay.
So I got a chance to look up your cute website. Cause I'm like, let's see what this looks about, since it sounds fun. Just curious, I'm supposing that insurance wise and everything's good with the animals and all the things, the activities that will be going on.
Yeah, I have to get, so, I believe it's insurance policy agreements. Most of them would have, we're trying to be two separate, equine policy and business liability policy, but, I found, an insurance provider and I'm waiting on it right now, but, they were able to fund it for me, and so we're just gonna get that.
Okay, so I just have a question. I remember this commission meeting, you mentioning that you would get an exemption on a license that doesn't require state certification. Is that what you've now changed to where you will have state certification and there will not be an exemption for that?
Sort of, it's very confusing, their licensing requirements. But so originally I was going to have 12 students per class, but if I cap it at 8, then I can fall under a home child care provider. So it's it's in the email, and I can, but so it's not, I don't have the same requirements as the license of a commercial daycare license. I don't have to follow those rules, but I had to just submit an application and submit my business information, and I'm registered with the state now as an in-home child care provider, so they can do things like random checks on the facility and things like that, but it's just a little bit, it's in between. The unlicensed, licensed, exempt, and the
So there's something in between those two, you say?
I guess
you're-
I'm
She's-
licensed, but I'm a registered in-home child care provider. It's a different certificate they have.
Okay, so.
Yeah, she's, Yeah, she's good. We've contacted the lady at the Bureau of Child Care. She's also explained that that's what she needs. So as far as state licensing, we're good. If you want me to forward that license from her, we can try that, but as far as staff is aware, she's got her everything she needs, all of her requirements, so.
Any other questions for her? Okay, thank you. So with that then, I would entertain a motion of the approval of the commercial business license for Elena Winter.
Well, I would make a motion that we approve the commercial business license for Elaine Winter, called Homegrown Farmette Preschool.
Motion has been made by Councilmember Flowers. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I'm going with Lisa
Okay,
first.
the second was made by Councilmember Northrup. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, the next thing on our agenda then will be the discussion motion on the H.L. Parker Legacy Subdivision Developer Agreement Extension Request located approximately at 5900 South, 5900 West. Do you have a presentation for us?
Yep, just to go over the timeline. So the original developers agreement was issued in April of 2021. They came back in April of 24 to request a 1-year extension, which was granted. And now they're coming before us this year to grant or to request another year extension. We went to Planning Commission last month, and then Planning Commission recommended just to do a 6-month extension through, I guess, this year's October 15th irrigation time. So they recommend to approve that 6-month extension, but not the full year on that.
Do you have any questions? Does City Council have any questions on this?
I think they need it. I've noticed, little bunds, gathered around talking over in that area lately. The subdivision itself still looks so far off the main road. There's gonna be some major drainage issues and things like that, so that's probably why I think this extension is to get some of those problems filled, because it's a very large difference in level.
I know they've been working pretty consistently with both Jared, our Public Works Director, and Malcolm, our city planner, as far as getting these things worked out. And they asked him at the time when he was here if 6 months would be long enough, and he said yes. And the planning commission felt, well, they extended it for 6 months. That was the recommendation to city council. Any other questions by city council?
Well, I think even if they went a year, I mean, they're gonna be in the winter time, so I think the 6-month is a good choice.
I do too.
Any other discussion, or is there someone that would like to make a motion on this?
I make the motion to extend the H.L. Parker Legacy subdivision until October 15th, 2025.
Motion was made by Councilmember Flowers. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second was made by Councilmember Marconi. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Can I just ask Morgan real quick? Can you just to make sure, because things got kind of scattered and stuff, can you read back my motion to me? Or is there any way you can do that so that I make sure it's correct?
Yes, let me find it in here.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, so I had your first motion to table proposal to draft an RFP for legal services and have more discussion and received itemized billing for the May 1st meeting, and then that motion was dead, so we've created another motion to table to discuss it further on May 1st, 2025. And then Bryce seconded. And then I think everyone was good on that.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we were going to have a discussion and a motion proposed by the Western Weaver CTC, and they had some family issues and were not able to come tonight. So we are moving them to also to our May 1st meeting. So the only other thing we have tonight then is a discussion and motion to a proposal to draft an ordinance for no motorized vehicles on city-owned property. And we had quite a long discussion on that in our work meeting. I think city council, and we had a really good presentation by Lieutenant Slater. Is there any discussion from city council on whether you would like to draft this or not?
I missed out on the work meeting, but just from somebody in my district, this was a message, and I've been trying to let them know that we were getting signage ready and some different things. But the dirt bikes, I want to discuss dirt bikes on the trail. Motocross tracks are highly regulated and should not be in neighborhoods. Noise ordinance is next to a natural protected waterway that feeds into our Great Salt Lake. It is scarring away off, no, excuse me. Yeah, it's scarring the land and scaring the fowl who formerly laid their spring eggs in the grasses and natural flora, but now it's a racetrack. The 46 hours Monday through Friday and 12 or more hours on Saturday and Sunday can easily heard inside our homes. Kids speed in the streets, the bike trails and probably on both for long distances and chase people actually off the bike trail. Some kids are even bullied. It's disturbing and frustrating. It's a purposeful bike walking path. They aren't going to block up the path, are they? So she was worried that by putting the signs that the path would be closed. And I said, no, just like the trespass signs. And so, do you know if they're going to do a restoration project then? Where the motocross track has been going, is made behind my house, is really the banks of the Howard Slough. There's a handful of neighbors that have called Sheriff's Offices, City, Department of Natural Resources, Environmental Quality, and Weaver County Commission and Water Resources. We've met with little and no hope so far, and hope we can get this resolved. Can't there be a section area that's just for like start a restoration like they do with the natural parks? And that's one of many. So I know I missed the work meeting about it, but I just thought I'd let her words be heard.
One thing we did talk about in work meeting, just for clarification to everyone, we did receive notification from the state. We are going to be knocking that down and doing preservation on it. Because it is now a state issue, we have to get a permit from the state in order to allow us to do that. We're hoping to have that done by the first part of next week, and then we will go about replanting some of those natural grasses because they are, it is controlled by the state. So is there someone that would like to make a motion on the proposal to draft an ordinance for no motorized vehicles?
I'll make the motion.
Really quick.
Sorry.
During the meeting,
Oh, yes.
yeah, so during the meeting, I did a little more homework. There is actually a state law that does allow e-bikes on a trail. So under the provision there now, it is there that would allow an e-bike. And I think maybe just some clarification of the motorized vehicle portion of the city ordinance. So just an update from the work meeting till now.
Like dirt bikes, 4-wheelers.
Yeah, I mean, it says, the signs say no motorized vehicles, which there's some, the intent of the sign versus, right?
Yeah.
And so did some homework while we were in the meeting, found that e-bikes are allowed, so I don't know that we have the same issue that I kind of presented in the work meeting. Still think it makes sense to clarify through ordinance what the motor vehicles are. And just amend or add to the city ordinance, so.
So do you recommend then, you know, how I had read off that portion of our newsletter? Then do you recommend that we need to remove that, you know, the way that it was worded? I don't think it's specific, it said assisted bike, so it was this is what was going out in our newsletter next week, mechanically aided propulsion, including motorcycles, scooters, assisted bikes, go-karts, four-wheelers. So should we remove assisted bikes from that wording for our newsletter?
Hang on, let me pull up some language.
I guess we could always have it more, you know, more specific as far as e-bikes, and that is a lot, as long as it's not less restrictive than the state has it. Because I still have those same concerns. I think sometimes with an e-bike, you can get going a lot faster, easier, and so
Yes.
people do that. And
So the state statutes 41(6)(a), 1115.5 talks about electric assisted bicycles. And subsection 2 of that code, it does say an individual may operate an electric assisted bicycle on a path or trail designated for the use of a bicycle. So essentially, the city could, I'm not an attorney, but that's where probably with the assistance of some legal counsel, the city could navigate through it. So I just wanted to update that when I was talking about motorized vehicles pertaining to an ATV and motorcycle and the bicycle, I did a little homework just because I knew there was something else. I found it, but there is a state law that does address them to be on the path, but if the city wanted to put some regulations in there, that's definitely, I think, within their purview to do so. And I also think it's still inside of the park, right, as we talked kind of that global getting some language drafted for appropriate use of parks, trails, and incorporating the motor vehicle aspect into those things. I know we've had some complaints of people riding motorcycles in the park, which is definitely not acceptable, but just clarifying details. So that was my only update from the work session till now. I just wanted to make sure you guys were aware there is a state law. And it gets into talking about classifications of bicycles. So yeah, there's some more language, I think, for further discussion for sure.
Well, I guess we could then make the motion to draft an ordinance, and then we could work with our legal counsel as far as what they would recommend with doing that, and I could reach out to them tomorrow to see about our newsletter, if we should, you know, if they would want us to take those words off.
Yes.
Any other discussion on this, or is there someone that would like to make the motion of the proposal to draft an ordinance?
No, and looking at this motion as it's written, I'm good with that motion. I mean, I could make it, and then, but we would have to define then what a motorized vehicle entails. Because motorized can be electric or gas, right? So, but if you want, I can make a motion with that. I can make the motion just like it's written, and then we just may have to have legal counsel or get with them on defining what a motorized vehicle is. So I would make a motion, a motion to propose to draft an ordinance for no motorized vehicles on city-owned property.
Motion. The motion was made by Councilmember Flowers. Is there a second? I'll second. Second was made by Councilmember Northrup. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, that's everything on our agenda for the night. Could we have a motion for adjournment?
I'll motion to adjourn.
I'll second it. Okay, motion was made by Councilmember Powers, seconded by Councilmember Northrup. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
Double aye.
You know, it's